Recently, I was having one of those days. You know, the days where nothing goes right and just get really frustrated at the world and you're snapping at people and you don't mean to do it. And I thought, I just need to go to bed. And I'm going to feel better in the morning. So I went to bed. And I got up in the morning and you know what? Didn't really feel any better. So I got up, decided to get in my car, pointed it towards the mountains and just went for a drive. Didn't really go anywhere. Just drove around for a couple of hours and then came back to right where I started, into my own garage. And you know what? Felt better. Journeys even without destinations, I think can do that. Sometimes we just need to get out, see some different things, and remind ourselves how big and how beautiful the world really is. Today we have interstate highway systems and jet air travel and bullet trains and everything designed to get us from point A to point B as fast as possible, as if nothing in the world is more important than getting to our destination. But is the point really to arrive? Or could it be something else? When we go for hikes, do we want the straightest, most efficient path possible? Or do we want one that kind of curves and meanders? Do we mind when we go out for a walk that we arrive back at the same place we started from? The first 5 books of the Bible are known as the Pentateuch, Penta meaning 5. And it's still tradition in the Jewish faith to read all 5 books every year. Now, the last 4 of those books are the story of God's people journey from slavery in Egypt to the Promised Land. Now, what's fascinating is that after 4 books of all the trials and tribulations that they went through, the 5th book ends not with them arriving in the Promised Land, but they're just on the border of it, standing on one side of the river with it on the other. They never actually arrive in those books. And instead, the reader just goes back to the beginning. In the movie The Way, the central character, Tom, finds himself in a very unexpected situation when his son tragically passes away. He travels to Europe, where his son was, to discover that he was at the very beginning of walking the Camino de Santiago, a classic pilgrimage trail. And for reasons Tom himself in the moment doesn't really understand, he decides to continue his son's walk. He doesn't know what he's looking for. At the beginning, he doesn't think he's actually looking for anything. It just seems to him to be the right thing to do in that moment. The Camino de Santiago is a pilgrimage trail that has existed for centuries. It leads to the traditional resting place of the Apostle James, and people have traveled it for many reasons. Originally, they were often looking for miracles, healing. They were looking to earn an indulgence, a little bit of time off their expected time in purgatory after they die. Contemporarily, people walk it for health reasons, to have an adventure, for something to do. Some of them are looking for spiritual or religious enlightenment, all kinds of reasons that people take journeys. And oftentimes, there's the reason that they started on the Camino, and then there's the reason they found when they are done. Now, there's a very poignant part at the beginning of the movie where Tom is talking with his priest after he's found out about his son's demise. And the priest asks him, "Do you want to pray with me?" Tom replies, "For what?" Have you ever had a moment like that where life just felt so disjointed, maybe so out of control that you just couldn't even imagine what to pray for, what to ask for? You just couldn't even imagine what would make it better? Probably one of the most famous Psalms, the one that most people know, is Psalm 23, which says towards the beginning, "Though I walk through the darkest valley, I will not fear, for you are with me." You ever really stopped to think about that? If God is with us, shouldn't we get to walk over or around the darkest valley? Why can't we not just avoid them completely? Now, in the movie, Tom clearly is looking for something. Maybe he's looking for peace. Maybe he's looking for a way to let go of his son. But he finds something else. In another important scene, he finds his own valley. He finds himself in jail, having alienated the newfound friends and traveling companions that he made, and having to deal with the fact that he has discovered something about himself, something he didn't really like. He discovered what he's capable of. Have you ever had one of those moments where you discovered you were capable of something maybe not good for you or good for others, and had to deal with that? Now, the book of Deuteronomy is the fifth book of the five. And as God's people are winding down their journey, God really gets down to brass tacks about what he wants and what he expects. He wants his people to truly be his people. He wants them to follow in his ways. So he starts to lay out for them what that means. He says you need to have a circumcised heart. You need your insides to match your outsides. And he talks about justice for the orphan and the widow. And he talks about loving the stranger. And he expects them to model those things as he is modeled for them. And he goes on to say, you need to love the stranger because you yourselves were strangers in Egypt. He's basically saying, you know how bad this gets. You know how things can go horribly, horribly wrong when somebody doesn't love and recognize the importance of loving the other, loving the stranger. You all can't do to others what was done to you. You need to be different because you are my people and I am God and I am good. You must be good therefore also. God put this expectation in the very beginning of the Bible, and it continues on throughout. So much so that actually after Jesus arrives on the scene and the disciples start to do their work and Christianity begins to flourish, those earliest Christians were actually called followers of the way. We were people who were following in the way and in the footsteps of Jesus. We tried to care about the things that Jesus cared about. We tried to act in the way that Jesus acted. We tried to love in the way that Jesus loved. And people noticed because it seemed very different from what the rest of the world was doing. So we have always understood our faith to be a journey that we never really fully arrive at, but we just continue on and continue being shaped with. So how do you reclaim your little piece of the way? How do you reclaim your piece of the journey? Do you have to go for a hike or a drive in the mountains? Or could we even just take a minute, just 1 minute, to spend a little bit of time quieting our minds and our hearts from all the things the world would have us care about? 1 minute focusing on God and God's love for us and what our little piece of the way is. Could even that make a difference? At the end of the movie, Tom and his companions find themselves in an unexpected place. Not physically, they knew where they were heading the whole time, but maybe spiritually. The writer that is with them found the inspiration that he was looking for. One of the companions who was looking for some physical transformation doesn't find that, but then instead finds a way to accept who he already is. A woman who had experienced abuse found strength that she didn't know she had. And Tom, who took up this journey for his son, didn't find a way to let go of his son, but found a way to embrace him, to embrace the wisdom that his son had, that he'd been trying to share with his father. Oftentimes, the most important journeys physically bring us back to the same place we started, but spiritually take us somewhere else completely. Perhaps to a place where we're a little more able to see the world the way that God sees it. Perhaps to a place where we're a little better able to see ourselves the way that God sees us. I believe God wants us to be on these journeys. God wants us to learn about ourselves and others. God wants us to see the world a little more like God does. God is willing to invest the time and energy in us to be our companions on these journeys. And if God is willing to have that much hope in us, that we are worth the time and the energy that it takes, certainly we should be able to find that same hope in ourselves and others. What journey are you on? Where is God trying to take you? Maybe not in body, but where is God trying to take you in spirit? We won't know until we ask.